Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the LEA Special Education Point of Contact monthly webinar for August. We welcome everyone back to the start of school for the 21-22 school year. For those of you who have joined, we do have a copy of today's presentation through GoToWebinar. If you go to the right-hand side of your screen on the GoToWebinar tab, you will see in our handouts menu, you will see a PDF copy of today's presentation under handouts. Feel free to download that and share it with your teams as well. A copy of today's presentation will be copies of today's presentation will be online. And we'll transition to the agenda for today. We will go through our introductions. We'll have some policy reminders and updates. We will go through our SEDS updates, and we will also transition into talking about our IDA monitoring reminders and updates. And we will have some updates to transportation, and then we will close out with announcements from our teaching and learning team. Again, my name is Tiffany Ingram, and I'm a program analyst here at OSSE in the K-12 Systems Division, and I will turn it over to Christy Weaver-Harris to share about our policy reminders and updates for today. Christy?
Good morning, everybody. This is Christy Weaver-Harris, the Policy Manager in OSSE's Division of K-12 Systems and Supports in our Office of Special Education. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have been doing over the summer related to policy guidance and some upcoming activities. Next slide, please. So over the last few months, we have started releasing what we call special education policy bulletins to clarify existing obligations on what's like really specific or discrete issues. So these guidance documents are not creating new responsibilities, they are clarifying your existing responsibilities. We released 4 of them so far, including a policy bulletin on ESY that restated guidance that we had previously released in the form of an annual memo that went out. In June, we also issued a policy bulletin related to medical assessments as part of an evaluation under IDEA, which clarified that an LEA must make arrangements for medical assessments at no cost to the parent if the IEP team determines that the medical assessment is necessary to determine a child's eligibility or educational needs. Medical assessments may include a medical or diagnostic evaluation by a licensed physician or other medical professionals, for example, a developmental or a pediatric optometrist. And if the LEA does not employ a person qualified to conduct the medical assessment that's needed, then the LEA should contract out for that assessment, but it must be at no cost to the parent. Next slide, please. Also in June, we issued guidance clarifying eligibility criteria for visual impairment. The U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programming had released guidance that states could not limit eligibility for visual impairment by establishing specific thresholds for things such as like visual acuity. So this guidance aligns DC's eligibility criteria to the IDEA definition that you can see here on the screen, which is an impairment in vision that even with correction adversely affects a child's educational performance. We've also updated this eligibility criteria on the eligibility worksheet in SEDS that went through in July. And finally, this week, OSSE released a special education policy bulletin regarding non-discrimination and IDEA obligations related to toileting skills. So if a student is unable to complete toileting tasks or experiences delays in toileting ability, the LEA cannot exclude that child from enrollment or discriminate against that child. And this is based in federal civil rights laws. Consistent with IDEA, If the LEA believes that the student's delays in toileting may be due to a disability, the LEA has child find obligations to consider or conduct an evaluation. And all of our policy bulletins are available on our special education policy guidance page linked here, which I will also drop in the chat. It's all the way at it's the last header at the bottom of that page. We will also have in this week's LEA Look Forward an announcement regarding the toileting skills policy bulletin, so there'll be a link in there too. So coming soon, hopefully very soon, is guidance for the 21-22 school year that's similar to the comprehensive FAQs that we issued last year that kind of were updated on a rolling basis. This document updates some existing FAQs and includes some new FAQs. It addresses a variety of concerns as we return to in-person instruction, including addressing medical exemptions for students with disabilities, compensatory services, obligations and considerations for IEP teams, accelerated learning for students with disabilities, and guidance on flexibilities adopted during the public health emergency that LEAs may continue to employ. And that's specific to things like the ability to continue to hold virtual meetings and the use of electronic signatures. When this FAQ is posted, we will notify all LEA heads of school and LEA special education points of contact via email, and it will be posted on our website, and there will be an announcement in the LEA Look Forward. But if you want to receive that direct email giving you notice that it has been posted, make sure that you are designated as an LEA SE POC in your LEA's eSchool Plus contacts. Next slide, please. As a reminder, with students returning to schools or students already having returned for some LEAs, LEAs are reminded that you must document the first provision of specialized instruction for students under the age of 6 who have such services, who do not have such services previously documented. This is a requirement out of the DLV DC lawsuit. OSSE is paying close attention to compliance with these requirements. So this includes documenting the first provision of specialized instruction for students who are transitioning from IDEA Part C, who may be at or around the age of 3, or who are transitioning from an extended IFSP, who may be at or around the age of 4, or students ages 3 through 5 who are newly found eligible for special education. This includes students who are transferring from out of state and also a student who previously had a speech-only IEP. Although we consider speech to be specialized instruction in and of itself, if you add a specialized instruction to a speech-only IEP, we are asking that you document the first provision of specialized instruction on that IEP. Next slide, please. So LEAs are not required to document provision of specialized instruction on an ongoing basis, or if a student has a revised IEP, if specialized instruction was previously documented for that student. So if you are amending other services or other aspects of the IEP, or even specialized instruction itself, and specialized instruction has already been documented for that student, you do not have to document it again. And students under the age of 6 who are continuing within the LEA or transferring into the LEA who also had specialized instruction previously documented. You are not required to document it for those students. If you have questions about this obligation, OSSE has a ton of resources on our website around the requirements of the DL lawsuit. You can also always reach out to me or reach out to your LEA monitor. Next slide, please. In September 2020, OSSE announced its partnership with the Ability Challenge, or ABC, to convene and facilitate a special education community of practice. Your colleagues across the education sector joined together, focusing on building practice to support diverse learners during continuous education and during virtual instruction. The initial focus of the community of practice was on aligning specialized instruction strategies to general education content in distance and hybrid learning settings. And then the focus shifted with the changing landscape of our city towards student data collection and planning for the delivery of accelerated learning. COP members from LEAs engaged in collective resource sharing, shared key wins, and drove positive momentum, including, using the COP to plan and implement school improvement projects in these areas and others. Next slide. As a result of this collaborative work, OSSE is pleased to offer, in partnership with the Ability Challenge, a two-part learning series to support LEA planning for recovery and accelerated learning for diverse learners. Series 1 addresses planning for accelerated learning and is a valuable support for special education points of contact who are designing accelerated learning strategies to address learning loss and regression experienced by students with disabilities over the last year and a half. Series 2 addresses special education improvement through continuous learning and is also a valuable resource for SPED points of contact to support the design of ongoing student evaluation and recovery planning activities. Next slide, please. So how can you engage with these resources? First, you can access the learning series. I will also drop the link for that in the chat. You can apply the skills from those trainings and from OSSE's guiding principles for continuous education to the implementation of your LEA's continuous education plan, or CEP, for the upcoming or current 21-22 school year. You can also visit the Learning Series blog that has more information on supporting diverse learners. You can also contact directly Sarah Sandelius from the Ability Challenge with any questions about the Learning Series or to get your hands on the materials that were shared during the Community of Practice sessions.
Thanks so much, Christy. As we go through our presentation this morning, if you have any questions as we go through our slides for our speakers this morning, feel free to place those questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer those questions throughout the presentation, and we will also have space at the conclusion to go through any existing questions that our attendees may have. Next up will be Karen Donna Morganson to talk about our IDA reminders and updates. Karen.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is, like Tiffany said, Karen Morgan Donaldson, and I will be providing some updates on our IDEA monitoring and compliance activities coming up here for the school year, and also some more short-term updates related to determinations. So this is our first slide, and this gives you an overview of our monitoring and compliance activities for this school year. During the month of August, so before the end of this month, we will be releasing C2B transition monitoring reports in DC CATS. So that will be taking place in the next couple of weeks. In September, we will be monitoring for child find. A quick update to our child find monitoring is that we are only conducting child find monitoring for LEAs that serve students 3 to 5 years old. We also will be conducting our IDEA equity requirement monitoring during the month of September. We are in the process of aligning our equity requirements here at OSSE. So that includes our significant disproportionality monitoring, also our disproportionate representation, and our significant discrepancy monitoring. We are going to be sending out updates in the LEA Look Forward, as well as notifications to LEAs who are flagged for these monitoring activities and regulations in the next couple of weeks. So please keep a lookout for that, but we are aligning those activities to reduce the burden on LEAs. We also, during the month of September, will be issuing our LEA determinations for federal fiscal year 2019. Again, the LEA determination is kind of like your LEA's report card for special education and implementation of services for students. During the month of May, we will be monitoring for secondary transition requirements, as well as reevaluation timeliness monitoring. And so those are our specific conditions requirements. So that's during the month of May. And then during the month of July, we will be conducting our annual initial evaluation timeliness monitoring with an emphasis on our 3 to 5 year old students as part of the DL lawsuit. Just a quick reminder, until further notice, LEAs continue to have the 30-day correction or clarification window after the initial release of our preliminary findings in DC CATS. Next slide, please. Okay, as I said, during the month of September, we are going to be issuing IDEA Part B annual determinations. These will be issued via the determinations quick base. Access will be provided to LEA head of school and LEA SPED POCs. It is also, access will also be given to data managers. It is very important that you make sure that the correct people are listed in eSchool Plus in order to gain access to the determinations quick base application. So just a quick overview of the LEA determinations process. OSSE throughout the year conducts various monitoring activities and collects a variety of data for LEAs each school year. So the determinations process compiles all the data from the school year and these different monitoring activities and compiles them into different elements or criteria used to calculate determinations for each school or LEA. So each element is worth a predetermined number of points, and each LEA's level of compliance and or performance for each element is weighted, and as a result, each LEA's ability or failure to meet the requirements of each element helps us determine each LEA's determination level. When determinations do go out, we will have a more detailed webinar to walk you through the determinations app, as well as the meaning behind each element. If you have any questions about any of the slides that I presented today, feel free to contact me separately or put your question in the questions comment or comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. We will now transition into our SEDS announcements and updates. We'll start off with Frida. Oh no, we're starting off with Stephanie. Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Tiffany.
I'll let you share the new updates you have for our LEAs around our new special education data system.
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Davis. I'm the Deputy CIO here at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education. And we can go ahead and move to the next slide. We're going to just give a one slide primer on where we are with the new special education data system. Great. So what we're doing here is OSSE will begin the implementation process of the new special education system in August 2021. So we have started the kickoff meeting with our new SEDS vendor as of August 4th. We will start re-engagement with LEAs in October of this year. There will be 2 engagement pathways. One, we'll create an LEA consultative team. This team will provide feedback throughout the implementation process, serve as the overall LEA representative, and will meet monthly or as needed to consult with the OSSE implementation team. From there, we also will have quarterly focus groups where we will bring back to the larger LEA population, where we will provide updates to the implementation status and allow for feedback on pending decisions that really impact the LEA and get an understanding from you on what will and what will not work. In that way. So this is where we are. I know a lot of people have been questioning what's happening, given that we had stepped away for a while from this work. And so we're excited. I see a question that has popped into the chat. Let me just look at this question real fast because I will not remain on the call. So the question is asking, who is the vendor for the new system? How will members of the consultative team be selected for LEAs? So the new vendor for the system is PowerSchool. Members are being selected through a methodology that OSSE has established here, and in that October session that you'll get an email on the dates shortly. In that October session, we're going to talk with the LEAs who attend about how we came to an agreement on who will be a part of the consultative team, get your feedback, and then go from there. So you'll learn more about the consultative team in that October session. Brandy, I guess, yeah, thank you. You're welcome. We're excited to make this happen and to move forward. This has been a long time coming. Are there any other questions? Because I really, guys, only have one slide. Yes, so our estimated timeline is school year 23-24 to go live, is our estimated timeline. And Tiffany, if we'll just hold just one more sec to see if there are any other questions that will pop in, because I will have to drop after this slide.
Okay. And again, if people have any questions for Stephanie, her contact information is here. If you haven't gotten a chance to put it in the chat and you want to follow up with her. And again, Stephanie, also, there are any questions that happen after your, like at the conclusion of the presentation, I'll definitely follow up with you as well and help connect our LEAs with if they have any outstanding questions for you as well.
Yeah, see, one question from Tana said, in 2023, we will no longer be using SEDS. Is that correct? That is correct. So our goal is to do a transition in school year 23-24 at the start of school year 23 in the June-July time period to move into the new special education system, which we all have to give a new name because we will not be calling it SEDS, okay? So we will work on that over the course of the next year and a half. All right, so I will let you guys continue on with your session. Thanks so much, Tiffany, for having me, and thanks everyone, and look forward to information regarding the upcoming session in October.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us that great update.
Awesome, take care.
Thank you. Rita is here to remind us around some special education data system administrative tasks that should be completed by our LEA. So I will turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And thank you, Stephanie, talking about the system that we are moving towards. I'm going to talk about the system that we're currently in and some of the things that you need to do to get ready for the start of school. In my next slide, there you go. We're going to talk through some of the SEDS administrative tasks for the start of school, things that you as the SPED POC need to be doing, such as transitioning your system to the new school year, account management, caseload setup, and very importantly, how to effectively use the OSSE support tool. So to start us off, we need to make sure that our systems are operating in the 21-22 school year. This is going to be really important for documents and other things that should be happening for the current school year. So as the LEA SPED POC, you're responsible for ensuring the school year is operating in the new school year. So you want to check your school system calendar. You want to be sure that you have edited your school year. So this is where you would begin enrolling over your system. You want to make sure the current school year is in your system. So you'll start by clicking on the school system calendar from the main menu, and then you'll go to edit school years. Now, if the 21-22 school year does not appear on your list, then you simply click that Add Next School Year button. And I know this is familiar to a lot of our returning users, but for some of our new SPED POCs, this will be really important for you to do this or you won't see the year in your list. In the next slide, after you've added that school year, you want to enter the start and end dates for the 21-22 school year. And then you can update the database. Okay. In our next slide, you will now see the school year populated in the drop-down for your school year list. So when you go back to your school system page, you'll be able to select that new school year indicator. And you want to make sure you're selecting the 21-22 school year from the drop-down list. Okay, so this is really important because it impacts what documents users are able to see, whether their default is in the current school year. As the next step, you'll need to update the reporting periods in SEDS. These correspond to the progress report dates of when teachers and providers will be entering progress reporting information. So to do so, you want to click the Edit Reporting Periods. And on the next screen, this will open the page to allow you to enter the begin and end dates and also the due date for any progress report. Now, keep in mind, you're really just setting up progress reporting periods 1 through 4. Typically, folks put in the ESY dates at a later time, so it's not really needed at this time, but you definitely want to put in your progress reporting periods. Typically, this would correspond with the report cards that are issued at the LEA around those same dates. So after you've entered the reporting period dates for progress reports, you'll return back to your main menu. So that'll be updated, allowing everyone to enter progress reports. Next, I'm going to talk about another important start of school task, and that is your SEDS user audit. As the LEA SPED POC, you are responsible for protecting the privacy of student information, and that means how folks are able to access student files in SEDS. So as a part of your housekeeping task, you should do a SEDS user audit to identify any users who are no longer working at the LEA, users who no longer need access to a student file, and then also, very important, non-public users who no longer need access to student files. So to begin this step, you'll go to the Users tab in SEDS, and on the next screen, on the Users tab, you can see all of the different user types that are available for you to select. It may be a good idea for you to go one by one if you're going to look at all SPED teachers or providers, because the list can, as you would imagine, get pretty lengthy. One thing we want to point your attention to is that you should never make changes to OSSE staff accounts that are in your system. Those allow us to help you when you reach out to us for assistance. So please do not make changes to any of the user roles that have any state or help desk indicators next to it. Next slide. In step 3, you can simply search for any user. So you're searching for groups of users. You're looking to see who's no longer at the school. So when you identify a user that should be removed, you can put a check in the delete column next to that user's name. Now, this is very important. The system never actually deletes users. It simply inactivates those selected users. So from this step, we are inactivating that user, but that back-end information associated with the user is still in the system. In the next slide, you will now see that you can, as I mentioned, the user's not deleted, they're just inactivated. So back to that school system tab, you have the ability to go back and reactivate a user at any time. You simply search for that person and then you can reactivate the user in the database. But very important to go through and remove users that are no longer with the LEA or folks that left over the summer, any number of those scenarios. Next slide. I'm going to talk just briefly about caseload administration. Now, as you know, as a SPED POC, you're responsible for assigning caseloads for teachers and providers, and also ensuring access for non-public users. So to set up caseloads for other users in the system, you want to go to the Caseload Administration wizard. From here, you're going to be able to search for users to assign students. Now, keep in mind, the Caseload Administration wizard is going to allow you as the SPED POC to set up the caseloads for other staff in your building. You would use the Caseload Setup wizard to set up your own caseload, okay? So you want to enter the first and last name of the user that you're going to search for. This is the person you are assigning a caseload to. You'll select that user. Now, when your list of users appears, it will show you the number of students that that user is already the case manager for and the number of students that they are a team member for. So you will see that from the list. You can select that user. And now you will have the option to add or remove students from that caseload. Okay, so the individual's current caseload will appear, and you will have the option to, in the first button, you can add more students to the caseload. You can remove all the students from this caseload, or you can transfer or copy this existing caseload to another user and then add new students for this year to that caseload. Next slide. Once you are ready to add students for the user, you can either make the student that is added, you can make them a case manager or a team member by selecting the checkbox next to that column. And this is adding those students to the person's caseload. Next slide. Now, I'm sure you might have a few questions about how to complete many of these tasks that we just walked through. There are video resources available, which we will be posting on our Start of School website. So there are video resources for you for system rollover, starting the new school year, and also caseload administration. As I wrap up, I'm just going to talk briefly about how you get support for many of these functions and things that you'll see throughout the school year. And that is through the OSSE support tool. The OSSE support tool is really your gateway to getting help and support for a number of applications that are available through OSSE. The SPED POC is able to register, or the registrar has access in the OST. Special ed teachers and related service providers do not have access in OST. So you're really the first line of support at your school for those staff members. If there's an issue you're not able to resolve, then you can create a ticket in the OSSE support tool. Next slide. In the OSSE support tool, you can add a request for support. You can request transfer student records, and you can also review records transfers. So as you know, records transfers will happen in SEDS based on enrollment in your student information system. So once a student is enrolled or registered in the SIS, the OSSE will initiate their records transfer. So you will really only need to reach out via OST for records transfer if all of the records did not transfer, or if the student, you know, the student is a SPED student but remains with a white check mark indicating general ed status in SEDS. That should indicate to you that all those records have not transferred. Typically, this is going to happen through automatic enrollment based on our SIS. So based on the feed from your SIS, that's how students are going to be moved into SEDS for you to be able to view. Next slide. So from the OSSE support tool, you're able to see the automated process of records transfer. And again, this does not require approval from the previous LEA. So we're just simply doing this based on enrollment information. Next slide. Okay, so that's how you would reach out for support. I'm just going to recap some system updates that you're going to see in SEDS as you start using it for this new school year. And those system enhancements include the EasyFax Medicaid solution. Remember, we have made it available now that you do not have to use EasyFax. You can use the upload option in SEDS. You have the ability to use the update IEP. Which is going to show you certain information that has been updated in the IEP. You will see updates to the visual impairment disability worksheet. Just some slight language changes as Christy described. You'll see that in the disability worksheet. There will be changes on the IEP LRE update page. You will also see some slight changes on the service logging screens, where you are selecting whether a service, or your providers are selecting whether a service was delivered in person or remotely. And then finally, new transportation report. that is in the report section that gives you an unfiltered view of all students that are eligible for transportation. So that's a new report that's uploaded and it's unfiltered that you're able to run. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation for this time. I'm happy to respond to any questions in the chat that you might have. I'll turn it back over to you, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, Rita. I know that was a wealth of information for our LEAs, and we're so grateful for Rita to give us that brief, refresher for our LEAs in anticipating the start of schools and those actions that need to be taken. If you have any questions for Rita, please place them in the questions box, and we will do our best to answer those throughout the remainder of the presentation, and we'll also have time for Q&A at the conclusion. We will now transition into reminders and updates from our transportation team.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize again for my voice. I apologize for my voice. Thank you, Rita. And we can go to the next slide. So for the 2021-22 school year, as we prepare for this upcoming school year, one of the things that we want to remind schools of is to ensure that you have accurate calendar information, which including your bell times, your correct cohort, exception days, half days, and holidays. Currently, as we're looking through the system, where our team is actually auditing the calendars within the system to make sure that your school have exception days. So as the team reach out to you, you might have been in contact with either Shanika Webb from our team or Dion McAdoo. As they're doing verification and checking through the schools, they will be reviewing your calendars with you to ensure that all that information is accurate and up to date. The other information that we want to remind you of is accurate student information. And we want to make sure that any students that will be utilizing transportation, that information is updated in the system and they have their TRF submitted, which means please go through and verify address, school programs, and the school. For schools, as we are doing our verification, any students that we've identified that have incorrect address, which means that we've called a parent and the parent have stated to us that the address is incorrect based on the TRF that is submitted, we will be uploading that information for you all in Box. So please look in Box. If you don't have access to Box, please work with our CIO team to make sure that you guys have access. The other important fact to go over is just the impact of late submissions. With late submissions, the data is inaccurate. It risks timely access to transportation, and it gives us an inability to stabilize the routes. We are in the process, our routing team is in the process of routing schools. And for all TRFs that are in the system to date, we have completed our routing process and our team is going out and beginning to do dry runs. And we are also doing our verification calls to all of the parents. Next slide. Another thing for consideration is as we shift towards preparation for the school date, there are key dates that we want to make sure that key things that we want you to remember in terms of student assignment. How does the students get assigned to a particular school? Which days of the week the students will be attending. We know that all of the schools currently will be doing regular standard scheduling, but at any point in the school year that your school decide to shift due to the Delta variant or anything that's going on, we ask that you please reach out to our data team to let us know what those shifts are so that we can then assist you in figuring out how to create the appropriate programs for the students, as well as shift your calendars if needed. We ask that you also prioritize, as you're going through your normal school year, we ask that you prioritize data submission for students with disability to ensure that we can deliver transportation timely. One of the things that we note, that we want you to know, is that if your school is not offering in-person service to all of your students, and there's a subset of your students that will be remote for any reason, we ask that you go in and flag those students as not using transportation for the time frame that they're not using it in tote. And when they transition back to regular in-person, then you could go in and change that flag to from eligible to not using to using, and then submit the TRF at that time. Next slide. I think these are just some particular guidelines that we asked, and that's been, Doug and team have been reviewing with you guys for the last couple of weeks. So we asked that TRFs be submitted 20 days prior to the first day of to your first day of school. As we're now moving closer to the first days of school for schools to start, we will be initiating our 10-day process moving forward. The other thing is, if you need help, you can always contact the TOTE support line. They're there between 9 and 5 p.m. But you can email them anytime at dot.data@dc.gov, and someone will get back to you. One of the changes that we made last year was adding the in-person start date. So for example, if a student in-person start date is not based on the school calendar, so say your school starts on August 30th, but a student is actually starting school 3 weeks later for their in-person start date, you can go in and make sure that you put the in-person start date for the student. For the school, sorry. I think you guys understand the cohort alignment from last year in terms of whether you're hybrid or not hybrid. I think from what we've seen so far, every school is basically doing a cohort O. Any school that is, like I stated before, if at some point you will be shifting due to, for whatever reason, from a regular school term to half hybrid and half in person, then we ask that you reach out to us as well as the rest of the OSSE team so that we can make the adjustments in our system to accommodate. We've actually just posted some additional training dates. So the training date, the key training dates will be September 22nd, October 6th, October 20th, and November 3rd. But if you have any staff that are new that needs training or just needs a refresher, they can always call the TOTE support line, or you can email dot.data, and we can set up a one-on-one session with your particular school or the staff that needs the additional hand-holding if needed. One of the other things that we've done prior to the pandemic in 2018 was, in 2018, we sent out no TRF letters. So starting today, our team will be sending no TRF letters to students who are eligible but does not have a TRF in the system to the parents, and to a notification was also posted in the LEA. Look forward for LEAs to actually see that information as well.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for joining us. If you have any questions for our transportation team, feel free to drop them in the chat. And ultimately, if you need any support, I will leave this up, dot.data. And again, this presentation is saved in our handouts if you have any further questions and need to reach out to the team to support over there for transportation. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you. And there was one question in the chat, and as Tiffany just you reiterated, our email address is dot.data@dc.gov, and someone from that team will be able to respond to you at any point in time. There's about 8 or so folks in that distribution list, including myself, so one of us will get back to you right away.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Jackie.
You.
And we will now transition into reminders and announcements. And we have Jennifer Carpenter here from the Teaching and Learning team to share about any upcoming professional learning opportunities and resources that our LEA should be aware of as we transition into the start of school. Jen?
Hey there. Hi, everyone. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that start of school trainings and supports are available for you. Training dates and details will be shared out to you as we go through the year. Make sure you're on eSchool Plus. I also want to ask you all to save the date for September 9th. The latest version of the TAL Bulletin will come out, and it will include information about a new special education training series, Foundations of Special Education. It will start off with 4 courses that will be offered over the course of the year, focused on IEP development, the assessment instruction cycle, and implementing evidence-based instructional methods for specialized instruction. And all of these courses together give you the opportunity to then complete an assessment and complete a micro-credential. And so you'll get lots of information on that in our TAL Bulletin on September the 9th. I will also ask Tiffany to ensure that you receive that information in an email, all of our SPED points of contact. Again, you'll get that information on September 9th, and the series of courses will be offered over the entirety of this coming school year.
Okay, thank you so much, Jen. We do have additional upcoming trainings with our legal resource publication. So in collaboration with LRP, OSSE will be providing a tutorial on Special Ed Connection. And Special Ed Connection is a platform that provides users with special education specific federal statutes and regulations, legal cases, federal policy, and news across the U.S. related to IDEA. And folks who participate in this training will learn how to best access information within this free resource that OSSE provides to LEAs and how to apply that to real world applications at their LEA. So this session is exclusively for our LEA special education points of contact. The session will be 1 hour, and our first session will be August 25th at 10 a.m. And then we will have another one next month, August 22nd at 2 p.m. So again, you will find information on how to register for those trainings when you click the link in our downloaded presentation. And of course, folks can reach out to me, tiffany.ingram1@dc.gov if you have any additional questions about that upcoming training with LRP.
And just to further support that training with LRP, when you email the policy team with questions about what your LEA obligations are, one of our most used resources is LRP. Special Education Connection is one of the first places that I go to help answer your questions. So I strongly recommend attending those trainings and using that resource, because you could empower yourselves to be answering the questions that you may generally need to send to me or my team. So it is an excellent resource, and I very strongly encourage you to be utilizing it.
Yes, thank you so much, Christy. We look forward to our LEAs joining these upcoming trainings with LRP to learn more about how to access this free resource. There is a lot of information on the website, and we will be going through how to navigate and find the information you need to support the work you do at your LEA. As always, if you miss a webinar, you can visit our webpage, our LEA Special Education Points of Contact monthly webinar series page. You can watch all of our previous webinars, download any training and resource materials that we shared in previous webinars as well will be uploaded. In particular, the recording for this webinar and slides will be posted to the web page above 1 week after our live webinar. So you can look forward to seeing this online soon. And our upcoming webinar, our next month's webinar will be September 15th. If you have registered for this session, you will get reminders for the whole series coming up. And if there is anyone in your LEA who needs to hear this information, feel free to pass this information on and ensure they are registered as well. As always, every month, we would love to hear your feedback on our webinar. So feel free to follow this link or even scan this QR code to provide your feedback for us in this session. I'm going to leave this screen up, and Chrissy, if you can help me go through, I know we have a few questions from folks that may be in the chat that we can answer here for a whole group. I know some of the questions Stephanie answered earlier before she hopped off the call about the upcoming SEDS system or special education system. Are there any questions that you see that may need to be answered here for the group overall?
Sure, there's only a few questions in the chat, so if you have any questions right now, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the questions box. And as a reminder, I did send the links that I referred to during my section of the presentation in the chat. So there's links in the chat box to the special education policy bulletins, our child find and initial evaluation resources, which includes resources around specialized instruction tracking, and then the link to the ability challenge learning series that I also spoke about. So within the questions box, somebody had a question asking me to clarify if you have to document the initial provision of specialized instruction for students with speech-only IEPs. Yes, please do. And also when you add specialized instruction to a speech-only IEP, please document it then too. There was another question about reevaluation monitoring. If the reevaluation monitoring is for the full year, it is just for it will just include Q2 and Q3. I think that might be everything.
I'm going to add on really quick to that, Christy.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
For secondary transition monitoring, that is for Q2 and Q3 as well. So all specific conditions monitoring is for reevaluation and secondary transition, includes Q2 and Q3.
Thanks, Karen. The next question that I see is if your LEA is in session, if everybody is stage 5 enrolled and records have not been automatically transferred yet, you should not assume that your students are duplicatively enrolled. I would encourage you to reach out to your LEA data liaison at OSSE to assist in ensuring that data systems are up and running correctly and that you are receiving student records, your access to student records as appropriate, especially within SEDS. I see another question about where we are documenting the first provision of specialized instruction. There's resources regarding that on our Child Find and Initial Evaluation website. Yes, it is within SEDS. It is it's documented similarly to a related services tracker. I think that's all. That's all I see.
Okay, perfect. I do know some people are saying that maybe they were new to the role. Our start of schools review training and many of the videos that Rita was mentioning is a link to that within the presentation as well of how to access some of those resources. So feel free to kind of download this presentation, click all the links as well. I do want to emphasize here in the appendix, we do have contact information for folks here within the OSSE team who may be able to support you. If you have any remaining questions after you review the information that's here, linked to these slides. If you have existing questions, remaining questions, I should say, after your review of the presentation today and the links provided on our website, feel free to reach out around these topics. Our contact information is here as well for you to reach out to our team. If we don't have any more questions, we want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. We wish you all amazing start of the school year, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Have an amazing day.